I have to talk about this Hollywood to Himalayas angle of your life throughout this episode. I would love to know instances, beginning with where you felt you started to shed off your past self, which was deeply accomplished from an education perspective. You'd completed your PhD and then you came here. So obviously there was a certain amount of evolution, lots of science, lots of thought patterns already built out. But what happened in India that you began shedding off your past self? And I would assume that process of shedding off your past self took you more towards peace and lasting joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful.
So, I mean, I think throughout this conversation, from this point onward, we'll unpack some key experiences of yours throughout your India journey. Because I think there's a lot of people like you all over the world who look towards visiting India with this perspective of self
Yes.
introspection.
Yes. Yes. And realization. Yes. So first of all, it's important to just mention at the beginning, I didn't come to India looking for this. I wish I had. I would love now, 29 years later, to say, oh, yes, I was searching for enlightenment. I was searching for truth. I was searching for a guru. But I wasn't. I was 25. I was someone who, if you had seen me from outside, you would have said this girl has everything. I came from a beautiful family in Los Angeles, a lot of prosperity and privilege and opportunity and love and all of those beautiful blessings. And I didn't know that spirituality was something to look for. It wasn't until I came here and had these powerful spiritual experiences that I even realized, oh my God, this world exists. Like, this is the answer to what I've been missing. So I came to India at 25 with a backpack on what I thought was just an adventure trip. I loved to travel. I had traveled a lot through Europe, throughout England, across the US, in South America, in a lot of places. And the only reason that I agreed to come to India, because I had been a very strict vegetarian since 15. My family was not vegetarian, but suddenly, upping up from inside at 15, just automatically, it came, no more. And I stopped eating non-veg. And so when I would travel, it was really hard to find food in restaurants, especially if you don't speak the language, that don't have chicken broth in some kind of a sauce or a soup or a base or a broth. But I had learned that wherever I was in the world, if I could find an Indian restaurant, then I was always sure to be able to get not only pure veg, but really tasty, yummy vegetarian food. But the universe has its own plans. On the airplane over, I had this conversation with myself in which I said to myself, okay, this makes no sense. You're in the middle of a PhD program that you love. You have no knowledge, no interest about this country you're going to visit. And even though I was not religious and not spiritual, I always believed that there was a capital P plan. I did not believe that anything was random. I had spent enough time in science laboratories to know that things don't, like life, don't just happen randomly. So the idea to me that this whole thing had happened utterly randomly, I didn't buy it as a scientist. So I always believed there was what I called a capital P plan, and therefore that there must be a capital P planner. Didn't bother me that I didn't know what to call it or have any concept of, what God might be. But I always believed that there was some intelligence, presence, energy that was the planner of this plan. So flying somewhere over Southeast Asia, I had a conversation with myself. And so I said, okay, look, what that means is there must be a reason I'm going, and I'm just not aware of it. And so I made a commitment that I would keep my heart open to find what was the reason that I was traveling to India. And I made a vow that if I don't keep my heart open, I was going to get back to Delhi, change my ticket, get back on a flight, and go back to California and start getting practicum units for my PhD. Okay, fast forward about a week. We come to Rishikesh. And so the universe created a situation where rather than staying at Lakshman Jhula, rather than staying in downtown Rishikesh, we came and stayed at the only hotel at that time that was in this Swarg ashram area of the ashrams. Put the bags down in the hotel. And I said, I'm going to go put my feet in the river. I didn't know the river was sacred. I didn't know it was the mother goddess. I just knew I'm hot, I'm tired, we've traveled, I want to just freshen up and put my feet in the river. And I go down to Ganga, and I stand on the banks of Ganga, and I have this extraordinary experience of being in the presence of the divine. But then as I turned my head, it didn't matter what I was looking at. A tree, a telephone pole, a family, a marble step. That presence of the divine stayed in everything. And it knocked me literally to the ground in tears of having come home, tears of truth. And then I turned that vision inward, because here I was in this experience of, oh my God, there is nothing but the divine. And then somehow at one point the vision turned inward. And up until that moment of my life, for the first 25 years of my life, I had identified fully and completely as my body, as my story, as my history, as the strengths, the things it could do, the beauty that it had, that, and the struggles and the challenges. In the midst of the beautiful blessings of my childhood, I also really suffered. I had experienced very severe abuse in my early childhood and then abandonment. When I was a teenager, I ended up with severe bulimia, depression, like really struggling. And I had always identified as that, like I am the victim of this abuse. I am the victim of this abandonment. I am the one with this bulimia, with this addiction. And to me, that was my identity. And by the time I came to India, I had done so much psychological work that I felt like I was really healing from it a lot. I was managing it, but it was still my identity. It didn't paralyze me anymore. It didn't prevent me from living. I mean, I was taking 21 units a quarter in a PhD program that I was getting straight A's in. So I was fully functional. But inside me was always this deep belief that something about me was not right, that I was somehow inherently damaged or tainted or wrong or bad, as you see in children who experience things like that, where the mind is always trying to make sense of things. And if you harm me, if you abandon me, it must mean because I am wrong or bad or dark or damaged or not good. So I carried that really, really deeply in me. And suddenly in that moment, as I'm seeing the divine in all, I realized, oh my God, it's in me also. There's no place that I end and the divine begins. There's nothing in me that's damaged. There's nothing in me that's wrong or dark or tainted or impure or not enough. Like, oh my God, I am one with the divine. That was this massive, like, rip off the Band-Aid. So that was the first. And that experience, of course, radically transformed my life. Like, in that moment, I knew this is where I am meant to be. And I spent the next several days just sitting on the banks of Ganga, crying ecstatic tears, knowing I have come home. Come home really to myself, and of course, come home to the place that I knew I was meant to be there. To get from the hotel to the banks of Ganga, I discovered that the nicest way of doing it, rather than down the alleyway that originally I had been directed, instead of that, there was this beautiful ashram that was clean and gorgeous, and gardens and flowers and beautiful divine statues. I didn't even know it was Parmarth Niketan. I just knew it was this beautiful ashram. And I was using Parmarth as just a walkway to get from the hotel to the banks of Ganga. And I'm walking through the ashram one day, and I hear a voice. Literally, a voice. And it says, "You must stay here." And I go like this. I mean, if you hear a voice, clearly somebody must have spoken. And it was definitely, it did not feel like an inner voice. I mean, obviously it turned out to be an inner voice, but it didn't have that felt sense experience of I'm thinking it. It absolutely felt like something outside of me was talking to me, instructing me what to do. And again, I looked around, and again, there was no one. And I was just about to ignore it because I was a scientist. I was not a mystic. I didn't hear voices. The only people I knew who heard voices were schizophrenics or Joan of Arc. And I knew I wasn't Joan of Arc, and I was pretty sure that I wasn't developing, hallucinations. So I just was about to ignore it. And I remembered my vow from the plane to keep my heart open. And then a voice in my head, my voice, spoke to myself and said, "Okay, you want to ignore this voice again? No problem. But now you better get yourself back to Delhi and back on a flight to California because you're not keeping your heart open." And the last thing I wanted to do, I was in the middle of having these ecstatic spiritual experiences. The last thing I wanted to do was leave and go back to California. So I said, okay. And I looked up and I see a sign that says office. And I go in and I say, I want to stay. So it's a really long story. I won't go into all of the details, but eventually I get to stay. And eventually I meet the head of the ashram, who became my guru, Puja Swami Chidanand Saraswati Ji Maharaj.
Hey, if you enjoyed this clip from the Ranveer Show, we've uploaded a ton of other clips related to a ton of other topics. So explore the channel because there's something for everyone.